Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are using the Thomas H. Johnson edition, and we are now to poem 597. It always felt to me a wrong. Now, this phrasing of a wrong is used only once in all of Emily's poetry, and it's here, right now. By the way, just back to 596. When I was small, a woman died. And then over to 600. It troubled me as once I was. This poem sits right in the middle of those poems. And we're going to make some comments about the personal nature of Emily's dance, dare we say it, wrestle with the biblical corpus. Now, we are in many ways back to another theodicy, the question of why must there be pain and suffering, in this case possibly rejection. I would write that down. And the fact that Emily is always grappling or wrestling with God. We'll have more to say about that wrestling here in a little bit. Now, when this poem was published, it was published in the Atlantic Monthly of February of 1929. And I believe that this is one of Emily's most important poems for reasons that we obviously have to get into. Now, first of all, Emily and her love of Moses. It is clear. We've already seen this. You guys remember when we did 112, for example. You'll remember this one. Where bells no more affright the morn, where Scrabble never comes, where very nimble gentlemen are forced to keep their rooms, where tired children placid sleep through centuries of noon. This place is bliss, this town is heaven. Please, Pater, pretty soon. Oh, could we climb where Moses stood and view the landscape o'er, not father's bells nor factories could scare us any more. You'll remember when we did 168, if the foolish call them flowers, need the wiser tell. If the savants classify them, it's just as well. Those who read the Revelations must not criticize those who read the same edition with beclouded eyes. Could we stand with that old Moses, Canaan deny? Scan like him, the stately landscape on the other side. Doubtless we should deem superfluous many sciences not pursued by learned angels in scholastic skies low amid that glad bell's letters. Grant that we may stand stars amid profound galaxies at that grand right hand. When we get to poem 1201, we'll continue our discussion of Emily and Moses then. And it will read like this. So I pull my stockings off, wading in the water for the disobedience's sake, boy that lived for odor. Went to heaven perhaps at death, and perhaps he didn't. Moses wasn't fairly used. Ananias wasn't. And then finally, her other mention is 1733 of Moses. No man saw awe, nor to his house admitted he a man, though by his awful residence his human nature been. Not deeming of his dread abode till laboring to flee, a grasp on comprehension laid detained vitality. Returning is a different route, the spirit should not show, for breathing is the only work to be enacted now. And then with quotation marks around it. Am not consumed, old Moses wrote, yet saw him face to face, end quote. That was Vigiotomy. I am convinced was this. The fact that Emily focuses on Moses as a writer will be something we have to come back to. Now, let's just remind ourselves of this Moses. The most important figure, of course, in the early stories that are told. You'll remember that in Numbers 21 through 13, Moses gets upset at the people and he will strike the rock that will give water instead of just speaking to the rock. And for this, we are told in Deuteronomy 32:52 that God says, Yet thou shalt see the land before thee, but thou shalt not go thither unto the land I give the children of Israel. This is God speaking. And then finally in Deuteronomy 34, you'll remember this, 1 through 6. And Moses went up from the plains of Moab unto the mountain of Nebo. And then at verse 4, and the Lord said unto him, This is the land which I swear unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, I will give it unto thy seed. I have caused thee to see it with thine eyes, but thou shalt not go over thither. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And verse 6, he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab. By the way, that's God buried him in the land of Moab, over against Beth-Peor, but no man knoweth of his sepulchre unto this day. Now of this Moses, who is accorded the author of the first 5 books of the Bible, think about that. Emily realized that the most important poet who has ever lived, the most read poet who has ever lived, is actually Moses. I mean, if you Google right now who's the most important poet who ever lived, you'll come up, usually Google will give you the answer, Shakespeare. Of course, Emily loved and adored Shakespeare, but she would have to argue way more people in the history of the world have read Moses if Moses is in fact the author of the first 5 books of the Bible, which of course tradition has suggested that he was, as well as the very texts themselves. Exodus 24:4 suggested. Exodus 33:11, supposedly written by Moses, says the following: "The Lord used to speak to Moses face to face as a man speaks to his friend." Now our assumption again is that you've been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you worked through our set of introductory comments where, for example, we talked about our big 5, the last of those being the question of theodicy, Theodicy. Why is there pain? Why is there suffering? Why is there, in this case, in this poem, maybe rejection? Okay, and what is its value? And I'm hopeful as well that you've already read our preceding 596 poems. If you have, then you'll be able to place this one within a broader context. For example, Emily's wrestling with deity. You'll remember when we did 59, a little east of Jordan, evangelist recorded, gymnast and an angel did wrestle long and hard till morning, touching mountain, and Jacob, waxing strong, the angel begged permission to breakfast to return. Not so, said cunning Jacob, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me, stranger, the which ascended to. Light swung the silver fleeces, Peniel hills beyond, and the bewildered gymnast found he had worsted God. Now, this idea of worsting God, I think, is central to how we read Emily. Do you guys remember when we did 357? That she is wrestling with God. God is distant, stately lover, woos as he states us by his son. Verily a vicarious courtship, Miles and Priscilla were such an one. But lest the soul, like fair Priscilla, choose the envoy and spurn the groom, vouches with hyperbolic archness, Miles and John Alden were synonym. And then, do you remember when we did 415? Just as we are getting ready to read this one. Sunset at night is natural, but sunset on the dawn reverses nature. Master, so sunsets do at noon. Eclipses be predicted and science bows them in, but do one face us suddenly, Jehovah's watch is wrong. So her willingness to attack deity, to challenge deity, is going to be central to this reading. Now our question will be, why does Emily identify with Moses so much? Is it the rejection? Is it identification with Moses as poet? That most people today don't even think about Moses as being the great poet, the great writer. I want you to also hear all the S sounds of this poem. It always felt to me a wrong that old Moses done to let him see the Canaan without the entering. And though in soberer moments no Moses there can be, I'm satisfied the romance in point of injury surpasses sharper stated of Stephen or of Paul. For these were only put to death, while God's adroiter will on Moses seemed to fasten with tantalizing play, as boy should deal with lesser boy to prove ability. The fault was doubtless Israel's. Myself had banned the tribes and ushered grand old Moses in to Pentateuchal roads. Now, the idea here to finish upon the broad possession, 'tis little, but titled him to see, old man on Nebo, late as this, my justice bleeds for thee. Notice the exclamation point at the end of the poem. Moses is going to receive for Emily, the idea here being Moses deserves better treatment than what he got. Now again, just to remind, Moses strikes the rock instead of speaking to the rock, and for that, Moses is told, you're not allowed to go into the promised land. The very thing that Moses has been doing all of his life to get ready for is the one thing he's not going to be allowed to see. And for Emily, she says, it always felt to me a wrong. Notice, she's thought a long time about this. From the very beginning of hearing this story about Moses, she says, I always thought this was wrong. To that old Moses, by the way, her referencing here of old Moses, we saw in the other poems, she'll say it twice, done. It was a wrong done to him. God treated him poorly. As we said, a wrong only used one time in all of her poetry. To let him see the Canaan without the entering. Now we'll ask, why is Emily so interested in this idea? You can see it, but you can't go there. I find it interesting that today we are reading this amazing poet who in her own lifetime was not known as a poet by anybody. And yet now we consider her one of the greatest. And though in sober moments, sober only gets used once in all of her poetry, and it's here. No Moses there can be. Notice the repetition of Moses in this poem. I'm satisfied the romance in point of injury. By the way, we'll get to romance when we do 669. It's a fascinating use of the word as well, and it runs like this. She says, no romance sold unto could so enthrall a man as the perusal of his individual one. 'Tis fictions to dilute to plausibility. Our novel, when 'tis small enough to credit, 'tisn't true. In point of injury. In other words, she says, I'm not sure it's fair the way he was punished, or injured, if you will. By the way, hear all these S sounds. Surpasses sharper stated. In other words, other people got worse punishments because they got death. She mentioned Stephen, the Acts 7:58 story, of course, stoned to death. Or Paul, who according to tradition was beheaded in Rome. For these were only, I would circle the word only, it might be the key word of the entire poem, put to death, while God's adroiter will. Can you hear the Promethean voice here? God was so smart. God is more adroit, more smart than anyone else, and therefore he knew exactly what he was doing by keeping Moses alive, allowing him to see the promised land, but not allowing him to enter the promised land. He seemed, notice the word seemed, to fasten with tantalizing play. Now, adroiter only gets used once in all her poetry, and it's here. And then she accuses God of tantalizing play. Well, I told you she uses the word play in 74 of her poems. 1290 is one of her most amazing uses of this word, so let's look at it real quick. The most pathetic thing I do is play. I hear from you. I make believe until my heart almost believes it too, but when I break it with the news, you knew it was not true. I wish I had not broken it, Goliath, so would you. And then she'll use it again in 1719. God is indeed a jealous God. He cannot bear to see that we had rather not with him, but with each other play. And so here it's God with tantalizing play, as a boy would deal with lesser boy to prove ability. God the bully. We immediately think, of course, of our reading of the book of Job, don't we? This idea that God has to put Moses in his place and bully him in some way. Now again, Emily knows all these passages, guys, that we read earlier, that Moses and God spoke face to face. What does he say? As a friend would? All right, okay. The fault was doubtless, now she's ready to end the poem. The fault was doubtless Israel's. In other words, the children of Israel are the ones who created all of the problems that kept Moses from entering the land, blah, blah, blah. Myself, notice we're back to the me of the opening lines. She says, if I had to do it, if I was God, I would have banned the tribes and ushered grand old Moses in Pentateuchal robes upon the broad procession. In other words, I would have rewarded Moses. 'Twas little, again, I told you about her use of the word little in 172 poems, but she says, I would have titled him to see old man on Nebo. Late at this, my justice bleeds for thee. It's an amazing verb. And I can't help but think of the word justice and remember our study of Plato's Republic, 617 of Book 10. The responsibilities with the chooser, God is justified. By the way, this movement from the past to the present tense has often been pointed out as well. What exactly is she saying here in 2a? I think her argument is twofold. One is that God's ways are mysterious. Deuteronomy 29:29, and secret things belong unto God. She would have known that verse. But I think her point here is as well, somebody got mistreated, and it wasn't right. I think it was wrong, and she says, I've always thought it was wrong. The defiance, the Promethean voice, as we commented on it at 2b. God's adroiter will. At 3a, what is really standing behind this? I think it's a reading of Milton in Paradise Lost. You'll remember the opening lines that she loves so much. Of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree whose mortal taste brought death into the world and all our woe, with loss of Eden, till one greater man restore us and regain the blissful seat. Sing heavenly muse that on the secret top of Oreb or of Sinai didst inspire that shepherd who first taught the chosen seed. In the beginning, how the heavens and earth rose out of chaos. It is Milton who ascribes to Moses the great teller of information. He is the greatest poet. And I think what's going on here, and the reason for the connection, is that Emily understood Moses is considered to be the writer of the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch. Exodus 17:14, Exodus 24:4, and Deuteronomy 31:9 all attest that it's Moses who wrote all of those early words. He is the greatest poet. And yet, we normally don't think of Moses as a poet. We think of him as everything else, a great leader, a great this, a great that. You'll remember his comments by Machiavelli in The Prince. But rather, Emily focuses on what an amazing poet he was, writer he was, and yet he was not known. He was not respected. Given the respect, she says it makes her bleed. I think the identification is very possible here. Finally, at 3b, what are your views on the treatment of Moses by God? Do you think it was fair? And do you think that Emily is in some ways connected with Moses for legitimate reasons? I'll challenge you to think about that. Thank you.